cheerleaders, Nurse Bell here, and welcome back to today's video. Today's video is going to be about how to master anatomy and physiology, and anatomy is one of my favorite subjects, by the way. It's super fun. All nursing students have to take it before going into their nursing program. I should rephrase, all pre-nursing students have to take it before going into their nursing program, and I'm going to break down 7 tips for you to master the course. So the first thing that I want to address is the question of why A&P is so hard. There are a lot of terms to remember, a lot of physiological concepts that you need to know, and a lot of older students tend to scare away younger students from the subject. So I want to just tell the younger students that you should take the older students' advice with a grain of salt. Everyone's experience with A&P is different, and it's just a matter of trial and error when it comes to learning what works best for you. So don't be afraid. You can master the subject. It just takes some time and effort. So let's get into the first tip. So the first tip that I have is to read ahead of time. I cannot stress this enough. This is really important for anatomy and physiology. What you want to do is you want to read the textbook before you head to lecture. That way you have an idea of the concepts that are going to be covered, and you also can come to class with questions. So I'm just gonna give an example here. All right, so I have my model heart here. Okay, here's the interior side, posterior side, and then the interior. Okay, you have the interior here. Fun fact, I've actually had this model for, I want to say, over 10 years. My parents got it for me, I think it was for Christmas, and because I did have a dream of wanting to be a cardiologist, and the heart is still one of my favorite organs to study, along with the circulatory system being one of my favorite systems. So that's why I have this heart model here today. But let's go do an example. So let's say I'm reading about the blood flow throughout the heart, and I'm reading about it in the comfort of my own room before lecture the next day. What I can do is I can read the chapter and take notes on it, and then I can come to class with questions that I may have, and then the professor, she'll be able to answer them for me, and I'll write down the answer to those questions, and then I will have left lecture with more knowledge than I came in with. I'll have my questions answered. So that's what you want to do. Anatomy and physiology goes crazy fast, and if you don't make the time to read ahead of time and see what you need to know, you're going to struggle. So read the lecture ahead of time. All right, so my second tip is to review your notes. Review your notes after lecture. They can be short review sessions. They don't have to be long. So let's say I had lecture in the morning, I can review my notes later on that evening. It can be like a quick session, watching an educational video. It can be going through the textbook, looking at the anatomical structures. It could be any of those things. And I highly suggest this, especially when you're reviewing anatomical structures, because a little bit at a time helps. Instead of cramming everything at the last minute, that's not how our brains process information. Every little bit every day, that's how you're going to get things done. So for an example, let's say when it comes to the anatomical structures, for anatomy lab, for example, let's say I had to know just had to know heart anatomy in general. So let's say my first review session I'm going to do, I am going to review the coronary arteries, which are the arteries that supply blood to the heart itself. Okay, so I'm going to learn about the coronary arteries, all right? That's my first review session. I'll write down all the structures I need to know, look at some diagrams, and that's my first review session for the day. Now the next review session, let's say I want to go over the coronary veins. So I'll write down those coronary veins and go over those veins as well, in addition to going over the coronary arteries, so that way that knowledge doesn't leave my brain. All right, then later on I can add more structures. I can add maybe the major arteries and veins of the heart. For example, you have this big branch here. This is the aorta, the biggest artery in the body. I can later on go to the pulmonary artery, which leads to the lungs. Oops, it's coming apart. It's coming apart. So the pulmonary artery, and then I can go to the veins. So you have the pulmonary veins here, which are gonna bring oxygenated blood back to the heart. So you have 4 pulmonary veins here. And then I could go to the bigger veins. I can go to the superior and inferior vena cava, and that could be my review session from there. And later on, I can keep adding more and more structures. So that's how you want to go about reviewing your notes. All right, so my third tip is to take practice exams. This one is very important. What you want to do is to mimic a test-taking environment. Put away all your notebooks, put away all your textbooks, so that way you can get a real feel for the information and really understand what you know and what you don't know. And after reviewing your answers and comparing them to the correct answers, then you'll know where your strengths and weaknesses are. So take practice exams, it never hurts. This is especially true for those who are nervous about taking exams. Once you simulate that environment over and over again, it should put you a little bit more at ease. So take the practice exams. All right, so my fourth tip is to form study groups with others. Grab some classmates, grab a friend, a roommate, whoever, and just go over the material together. You can do game sessions, you can do Kahoots online, there's plenty of them. You can also do Jeopardy sessions, which are also really fun. You can also just do practice exams together and reason through the questions to see if you can find the answer. Yeah, those are all really helpful, and it never hurts to hear another perspective on a certain topic, especially when it comes from a peer. So form study groups is very beneficial. I've used it a few times myself. I haven't used it as often because I'm a visual learner, but it has been beneficial for the times that I have used it. Okay, so the fifth tip that I have is to teach the concept to someone. So you can grab a friend, grab a sibling, your parents, whoever, and teach the concept that you just learned to someone. The saying goes that you never really know something until you teach it. I think that's a saying. If it isn't, I just made it up now. So, so you really know you know something when you teach it to somebody. So let's say, for example, I was teaching my sister. I'm gonna grab the heart model again. So let's say I was teaching my sister how blood flows through the heart. Just grabbed her, sat her right there. Here is how blood flows through the heart. And let's say, for example, as I'm going through the steps, my mind is drawing a blank, like I don't know where to go next. That can be a red flag for me that, okay, this is something that you need to review. So again, it never hurts. I know some people are nervous about this one because you may not be comfortable talking to a peer or even a family member about, things like this, but it never hurts to try. So teach new concepts to someone else. All right. So my sixth tip is to review old concepts. Anatomy is just like math, it's foundational. So let's go, for math, you can't just jump to algebra without knowing how to do the 4 operations. You're gonna struggle a lot. So when it comes to anatomy, it's very foundational. The way the course goes, it goes up gradually. So you're gonna go through the cellular level to the tissue level and then to the organ system level. And you're gonna learn how the organs soon work together to form a whole organism. So it's very important not to just study for the exam, forget the material, and move on to the next concept. It's going to build upwards. This is also really important for future classes. For example, pathophysiology, which you'll be taking later on in your nursing program. That's about how disease works in the body. And if you don't have a strong foundation as to how normal physiological functions work, you're going to struggle, and you're going to have to do a lot of reviewing back to anatomy and physiology. So reviewing old concepts is key. Just do small review sessions. They don't have to be long. You could just skim something really quick in a textbook. You can also just watch some educational videos in little chunks. Like for me, I watch some crash course videos every once in a while just to review the topics and make, keep them fresh in your mind. And lastly, the last tip that I have is mastery is the goal here. This is very important. So the main reason why I stress this one is because you don't want to go through a course and when you're done with the course, realize that you didn't learn anything. You haven't learned anything. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of effort. So it's very, very, very important to put in the effort to master the material. It's not only going to make you a better nurse, but it's also just going to make you a better learner in general. So I know a lot of people stress, grades, and grades are important to an extent, but the real goal is mastering the subject. And that will take some time and effort. No, you're not going to master anatomy and physiology overnight, but it is something to keep in mind. You want to master it so you can build a solid foundation for later on in your courses, because it will come back. They will come back. um, our programs, they wouldn't stress anatomy and physiology as much if it didn't. So again, continue to space out a study schedule, even after you finish anatomy and physiology, and you'll be all set. All right, so that was the end of today's video. Be sure to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for next week's video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.